Welcome back to the Grow Like a Mother podcast. Today we're talking about this question of how do you show up as your full self in spaces that weren't really built for you or with you in mind. Today I'm joined by Rashi, a powerhouse leader who's reshaping what leadership can look like from both inside the boardroom and at home. She's a global leader in leadership and development, a former management consultant, a published writer, and a mom navigating the complexities of motherhood in a male dominated industry. Rashi and I talk about the disconnect so many high achieving women feel, which is like this tension between looking like you've got it all together on the outside while quietly crumbling on the inside. We're going to dive into mom guilt of rejecting hustle culture and designing a life that really feels like yours while redefining what it means to lead with humanity instead of hardness. So if you've ever felt that sort of tear, that pull between ambition and presence, or if you felt pressured to mute parts of yourself to fit into a box that you didn't choose, this conversation is here to remind you that you are not alone and you don't have to do it their way. So let's just dive in. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for us to get into this conversation.
Me too. Me too. And I think that the place that we need to start is sort of that moment in time in your life, if you can share with us in whatever detail or not you feel comfortable, where you realized that externally it seemed like things were pretty good, but internally it was like the complete opposite, not good at all, not feeling happy. Um, Take us back to that moment.
Yeah, so maybe this kind of arrived at this moment a year or two back. I guess it was about 2 years back. And again, externally, I've always been someone right from the get-go and who sort of always confused success with achievement, which was happiness, right? And so in my head, I always thought the only way to operate and be is to keep sort of hitting certain markers, keep climbing certain mountains. And it served me pretty well, right? I think it was my fuel. It helped me do a bunch of things. And then every time I thought that I would reach that sort of destination, the peak, I would find a sense of like happiness, joy. I would feel like I've arrived. And every time I would reach that, I would realize, oh, there's a bigger peak to climb or something else to run to, right? And so I think I was at that stage professionally where I'd moved countries. I sort of grew up in India, came to Canada, went to business school, joined a management consulting firm, was growing pretty, at an okay pace there. I was doing well there. And I stood at this weird crossroad where I could either go for this next sort of big promotion and push myself for it, or explore a little bit more of my curiosity and go down this meandering path. And at the outside, everybody thought I had it all, right? Like I was happily married, I have a kid, I have this great career, we have a house, like, and from within, I just felt the sense of, I wouldn't even call it dread, but there was this whole idea of, is this it, right? Like, when does this stop? When do I get to live for myself and do things that give me joy versus chase the next mark? And when do I get to just pause and breathe? I felt like I was on a treadmill. And for a brief period of time, I just wanted to step off the treadmill, right? And so I remember just looking at this next big decision I had to make, and just being filled with this dread of, if I actually get what I want, I'm not going to be happy. I mean, eventually, do I want it? Yes, but at this stage of my life, with everything that's happening, and the fact that I reprioritized a lot of my personal life and my hobbies and my relationships, I had this realization that at this moment in my time, even though I was telling myself externally I wanted that next big sort of promotion at work, and everybody was telling me you're ready for it, I just felt like if I got it, I actually wouldn't be happy. And so that sort of gave me courage. And I worked with a coach, to figure out how do I do something which today gives me more joy and is closer to who I am, versus just chase this next sort of big external validation because I wanted kudos on, the internet.
Yeah. And what a brave decision, right? And so amazing that you were able to stop long enough to consider like, is this what I actually, is this what's going to make me happy? Is this what I want? Like one thing that I have heard you say that I think is so insightful is that you can have everything you want. You might just not have it all at once. Does that still feel pretty true for
Exactly.
you?
100%, right? And I think that's the failure mode I was in, where I wanted it all together. And at some point, the realization hit me that, hey, like, yes, we all have 24 hours. And in that 24 hours, something's got to give, right? And so I stepped back and I said, in this season of my life, like, what is that sort of this whole concept of, you have revolving doors, and like, one-way doors. And so there are certain things which are sort of revolving, right? If you choose to like get out of that place today, you can go back in there tomorrow. But there are certain things which are just like this one-way door. And I realized, in this season of my life, if certain aspects of my personal life, right, like being a mom to my little kid or growing my family, were things I would just choose not to do and push down the road, then 10, 12 years later, it would be really hard to go back in time and do it. My daughter would never be a preschooler again. And so for me, I think once I had that realization that, I can have it all, it just doesn't all have to happen at the same time. And time is a true constraint. And I know you know this very well. It's a two constraint. And so you've got to step back and say, at this point in my life, what are those sort of, glass balls that I don't want to drop? And what are the plastic balls that even if they drop, like they'll bounce and I'll pick them back up again. So 100%, with that philosophy of the fastest way to burn out is when you try and do everything together.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that visual of the glass balls and the plastic balls because it's true. You can't hold all the balls at once, and you have to be strategic about which ones you're going to focus on. And to me, that really is like where you're spending your time and your energy, you know? And someplace that I know you spend a lot of time and energy is the newsletter that you have put
Mhm.
together, Decks and Diapers. Tell us about this.
Yes, so the whole newsletter also came from me sort of exploring this sort of dichotomy that got presented to me, right? Which is either you can be professionally successful, or I guess you can have personal fulfillment slash become a mom, right? And so I actually started writing this because I couldn't find this content, and so I said, there's if it doesn't exist, create the kind of stuff you want to read. And it came because I was in my maternity leave. My daughter was born a few days before the pandemic started. So she's a March 2020 baby. And it was in motherhood generally, I think when you do it for the first time for a lot of women, it's a lot. It's isolating. It can lead to a lot of different emotions. And that coupled with like just the isolation of the pandemic and the confusion, I felt very lonely and without a community. But I knew that, my work and my professional identity was important to me and I enjoyed it. And I knew I needed that in my life to show up well for everything I was doing in the other aspects of my life. And I also wanted to do right by this child who I brought into the world and be a good mom to her. And so when I started going on the internet and I'd read about, how do you be a good mom? A lot of the content made it seem like this all-consuming thing that's all you do, and the best moms are the ones who are fully invested in every aspect of their kids' life, and you barely outsource anything. And I was like, okay, that's not me. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to go back from my maternity leave, right? I want to kind of pick up my career where I left it. I want to accelerate in my career. And I would read content around just growing professionally. And that again made it seem like you were unencumbered, right? Like nothing else was happening in your life except work. And so I said, okay, no, both those are not my reality. How do you make them come together? And so I started Decks and Diapers, really to start meeting women, men who I say are navigating these dual sort of ambitions of professional success and personal fulfillment. And it really started by saying, let me just reach out to people, on the internet and learn from them. And initially, I just thought it'll be a small sort of maternity leave project. But as I started doing it, I think the conversations like started changing me. I started sharing it on the internet. It started growing. I sort of built a community around it. And so, yeah, it's just something that I've done ever since. And it's gives me immense joy because it lets me meet, humans such as you.
Yeah. And it's something that you're doing in addition to a pretty high-powered career where you are in this like traditionally male-dominated workplace. And I would love for you to share how you're trying to show up in your motherhood and in your like authenticity in that piece of your life and bringing that into the corporate world. Like how are you meshing those two things at work?
Yeah, so I mean, we can get into the time management, but which I know you will also love to explore as to how do I actually take out time for a passion project. When I tell people I do it in my non-existent kind of free time. But I guess to your first question, I mean, a big reason why I also talk about being a mom and I publicly sort of share this and I own this both within my organization and outside is exactly for that, right? And a lot of sort of male dominated industry spaces for the longest time, women were told to like not be women, right? There was this whole idea that don't tell people you're a mom. A lot of women would actually leave wedding rings and take them out because there was this idea that, oh, she's married, eventually she'll have a kid and there goes her career. And a lot of women thought the only way to succeed was kind of start becoming more masculine in a certain sense, or start behaving like a man and not sort of lean into, what makes women women. And for me, a very sort of conscious choice was that no, there are certain things about me being a mom and a mother which actually make me a much better manager, right? Like time management, empathy, being able to prioritize, being able to connect. And I am not going to demean what I do at the home front, because skills are transferable, and a lot of skills that I learned from there can be applied to my day job, and in fact make me better in my day job. And there is a little bit of privilege where I sort of feel, confident and stable in my abilities and my skill and my career. Plus, of course, my organization's been supportive, where I know I can own this and help others feel seen, right? I know a lot of people don't have that privilege. Unfortunately, there are women who work in places where they cannot own this aspect of their identity. And so I think if I have the privilege to be able to own it, then hopefully it makes someone else feel seen. And very, very frequently, almost at I'd say once a month sort of cadence, I have some random person drop me a note in my LinkedIn or my inbox or on the newsletter saying, look, I feel so seen. Thank you for doing this. And can we just talk? And I want to know how you navigated, say, a maternity leave, return to work, changing paths at an organization. Um, so a large part of like me just owning my identity as a mom, I think, and even though very well-intentioned people sort of told me not to. So I remember when I was doing this, somebody who I really value and respect, she's like an executive, she's closer to her retirement, said, I would not own this on your LinkedIn profile because there's a lot of this bias, and you're a bright, competent woman, and you might get passed on for opportunities because of the bias, because someone will assume, oh, she's a mom, so this may not be the right opportunity. And I thought really hard about it. And I said, no, I'm going to still do it, because you know what? Me being a mom is a feature, not a bug. And what that means is that if someone doesn't reach out to me because they think I'm a mom, that's a great signal, because that environment and that opportunity and that community, I would never thrive in it anyway. I'm not going to hide this aspect of myself. And so, in a way, it's a great filtering mechanism, right? Um, and that is also a big reason why I just say, hey, as women, we should just own this aspect of our identity. Because if you've got to fake this to be successful in spaces, that anyway, those spaces were never going to be great for you, right? And
Mhm.
it might just be better for you to move into places where you can thrive, owning your full self, versus constantly staying in a place where you feel sort of miserable every day and smaller every day than you need to be.
That is like mic drop. It's so true that if you are trying to hide an aspect of yourself or pretend you're different or your life is different than it truly is, the opportunities that come from people who want the thing you're pretending are not going to be the right opportunities for you because you can't pretend always. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
thank you for bringing that up. I think
But there is
that's
some
so smart.
privilege in that, Jill. I also want to make sure people recognize there is some privilege in that, right? Because I know there are women who are like, hey, I just need this job because it pays the bill. And I'm like, yes, I get it. But for the ones who have the privilege to walk away from those environments, or sort of take the risk of saying no to 10 opportunities to wait for the right one, I just say if you have the privilege, then exercise it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm curious to know with those folks that you're inspiring and sort of shining light into what you tell them when they ask you like, how do you manage this all? Like, how do you manage your time? Like, and as a time management person, I'm so
Yeah, yeah.
secretly eager to know.
So I think there are obviously some systems that I used to sort of manage my time. And, as I said, trade-offs, and you can't have it all. So the reality is, do I watch TV? Not really. I get very little TV. I do enjoy reading and I do enjoy writing. So that's what I prioritize. My like Friday evening activity is to write my newsletter. Like once my daughter's in bed, I like sitting with like a nice sort of beverage of choice. And usually from like 8:39 to about 10:30, 11, I'm hammering out my newsletter, and it's actually very therapeutic, and it helps me disconnect from the work week and get into sort of weekend mode. So I think one is just making choices and saying there are 10 different leisure activities one can engage in. Which one energizes me more, and being okay with the idea of like, I just don't get time to watch TV, and that's fine. And I think the second thing also is in our household, like me and my partner have created some systems, right? And so both of us uh, I know this sounds a little geeky, but every Sunday afternoon we do like a weekly catch up where we look at our calendars. We both take on certain sort of childcare activities. We both have jobs which are pretty demanding, and we both travel. So we sort of map out on the calendar as to who's providing coverage where. And then both of us have certain nights where we kind of give each other like a your free night sort of card, right? Where the other person post work is an adult and doesn't have to do any of the dinner, bedtime, bath, all that routine. And so, my husband chooses to exercise that to go and he plays soccer and he rides his bike and he goes to CrossFit. And I use some of those nights for like going out to the gym or going for events or recording podcasts or just recording my newsletter. And so we've also created that structure where on a weekly basis, we almost kind of look at our calendar for the next week or two and identify ways in which we can also give each other a little bit of like sort of me time, right? Which I know once people become parents becomes just really hard. So that's maybe like the second sort of big thing that we've done. And then the third thing that I've done, again, small micro habit, but I always carry a book with me, like irrespective of where I go. I have this big tote bag and there's always a book in it. And I always have my iPad, which is loaded with the book. And so even if I'm, waiting at the doctor's office, if I'm waiting for something else, if I'm traveling, instead of me just mindlessly scrolling on my phone for 15-20 minutes, I'm just getting some reading done because A, that energizes me, but also when you're writing and sharing your thoughts with the world, unless there's good sort of input, there's crappy output. And so for me, I'm also very conscious about, you can see that stack of books lying right there at the back. But I'm also very conscious about, my sort of content diet needs to be healthy. And I've made these small changes where I just do a little less mindless sort of scrolling on my phone and more directing whatever little free time I have into sort of the right sort of things that like fill my cup again.
Okay. I can't tell you how happy this makes me that you are sharing these specific things because they are the things that I teach all the time for people. I just want to call them out. First thing is personalize it. Chivi isn't top priority for you, and that is okay. You're cool with that. You have other things. That is amazing. We have to personalize our free time and our self-care to what actually feels good to us. The other thing that I think is so important that you said is you plan. You look ahead at your week and you're trading off time with your partner and figuring it out in advance so that you know what is happening and how to show up, right? And then the last thing that you mentioned is how you use what I call time confetti, these pockets of time that we generally just scroll through, and you're using them intentionally to do something that's meaningful for you, like reading. And I think that that is so fantastic. Kudos to you for sort of figuring this out on how to I mean, I want to say have it all, but I know it's not that really. But you found a cadence that works for you. You have found a rhythm. You have found a way of operating that allows you to stay authentic to you, to pursue a passion project, and to, fulfill your ambitions in a career. So, I mean, like, well done.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. I know a lot of women sometimes shy away from saying, "Oh no," and be all humble, but I've also learned to be, yes, thank you. It's obviously taken some work to get here, but I'm also very open and share these, I guess, secrets or hacks with people because I think sometimes a lot of people just struggle with the, oh my God, how do you like do a bunch of these things? And a lot of times it is just create some systems, go audit how you're spending your current time and then just start piloting something new in your own life, right? Just start testing a few things out. And eventually, I mean, are all weeks perfect? No, but mostly, right? I feel pretty good about like this season of my life.
That's amazing. Real quick before we wrap up, I'm just curious, do you ever experience mom guilt?
I used to, but I've gotten better not. And I think it also comes from I'm a product of a working mom. My mom, by the way, is an inspiring woman. Like she was a one-star general in the Indian Army and a doctor. So she's a cancer pathologist, an oncopathologist, and a one-star general. So she's actually the OG in my life of this woman like doing really well in a male-dominated space. And initially, whenever I used to travel for work, or I'd miss like my daughter's bedtime routine or just like buy her store-bought cookies, my mom was like, you know what? I did the same for you and you've turned out fine. It's okay. And I've left my daughter, sometimes I've gone for conferences and just felt horrible. In the beginning, when I would do it, I would cry and I'd be like, oh my God, this kid is away for like 2 days without her mother and she's just 2.5. And then my mom would tell me all these stories about, I used to do the same. And as long as you help explain this child and there is secure attachment that you go, but you come back, and sometimes dads travel and sometimes moms travel, eventually it'll be fine, right? And I remember growing up thinking that my mom was one of the coolest people in the world. And so, not that I'm hoping my daughter does the same, but I think it has helped me not to feel that guilty because I've seen a role model who sort of, did it. And like she says, I turned out fine. But also, as I started growing up, I used to be incredibly sort of proud of the fact that my mom had her own identity and her own sort of career and her own place in the world. And I'm hoping that, my daughter sort of sees that. And yes, am I sort of baking cookies for her or just buying them from the store? I'm doing the latter. But I've learned to just tell myself it's okay. I cannot I
Yeah.
just don't have the same amount of time that someone who's not doing a few other things that I'm doing has, right?
Yeah, I love that. You got inspiration from your mom. You are an inspiration for so many other moms out there. Man, thank you for coming on and sharing your experience with us. I think it's so cool to be able to see the behind the scenes of like how it works and what it's really like and the little tidbits and glimpses into how you're managing it have been so helpful. I know the listeners are going to get so much out of it, and I want to give you the chance to sort of give people the where to go and like how to connect, like if they're just loving this conversation as much as me and they want to dive deeper with you.
It sounds good. So I am very online, very millennial. You can find me on any text-based social media platform with my first last name. So LinkedIn, Twitter now called X, Threads, Blue Sky. I'm on all of them. I'm on Substack too. I write this newsletter called Decks and Diapers. If you again Google it, it should take you to the landing page. And if you just put in your email ID every other Saturday, it'll start like coming into your inbox. And that's again a great place to just drop me a note. And as I mentioned, I'm always sort of open to talk to people. I know, we live in a world where loneliness is a problem, and a lot of times, a lot of women sort of feel like I'm the only or I'm alone. And I think some of this is we all sort of are on the shared journey, and we're all struggling with a bunch of these things. And so, if anybody feels like, hey, they want to reach out to me, they want to talk to me about something, they just want to connect, I'm always down for a good conversation.
I love that. And I can see that you truly mean that. Like you are here to help and support and you're such a generous soul. So thank you for your time and your wisdom here today and for that invitation for the listeners too. Like that's so important for us all to not feel alone. And so thank you for being that sort of beacon of light. And
Well, thank you so much, Jill. And again, thank you for giving me this platform or just having me on your podcast.
it's been my absolute pleasure. And for everyone listening who is still with us, thank you for your time, for joining this conversation with us. And until next week, keep on growing like a mother.